I thought I'd just kind of share a little bit more about my story for like 5 or 10 minutes, but then happy to talk about anything. Hiring, firing, raising money, ideating, whatever's interesting to you guys. But just for my background, for context for everything, I grew up in Southern California in Orange County. For college, I went to the Naval Academy and studied electrical engineering, so some of the stuff that you guys are doing here. And hated the Naval Academy, but well, the first 2 years really sucked. But then after that, I went and did nuclear engineering and spent about 5 years on submarines. So that's 5 years on a metal cylinder in the middle of the ocean with 180 other dudes away for like 3 months. So similarly awful experience. But it was actually pretty fun. You did some really cool stuff, like sitting off the coast of a country, looking at a periscope. They're looking for you, and it'd be like an international incident if they find you, and you're like literally talking into a microphone, taking notes, like really, really crazy stuff. So did that for 5 years. Really liked managing people. I would work with teams, and you're kind of in charge of situations. Really liked organizing teams and doing stuff like that. Didn't like the whole metal cylinder in the ocean thing. So decided to go to business school over here at Stanford. Quick plug for the Stanford Business School. Awesome experience, probably the best 2 years of my life. And that was, for me, when I really found out about startups. So you guys have a serious leg up on me. It was at business school a couple years ago when I just learned about where big companies come from. And a lot of them start out as just little companies. And so spent 2 years there, and right after that I started VideoGenie. And I started it, actually I was supposed to go to a big consulting firm called McKinsey in New York. It's pretty much the opposite of startups, working with Fortune 500 companies. And my start date got pushed back. I had about 9 months and started working on a company. Never really thought it would go anywhere. And started out, as most startups, started out as something completely different than what we do today. And started out really liking video and thought, hey, there's a way to capture really great personal stories. So maybe there's a way to, let's say for a birthday, I could invite all my friends to share a little message on video, and then with software we could piece this together into one solid video and give it to someone for their birthday. So we started out doing that. It was just me. I used outsourced engineers in India to build the first prototype. So I'd get up at like 5 a.m., I would talk to Sandesh and my Indian team. I would review all their work, and then they'd go to bed because it was nighttime over there. Spend all day working and getting revisions on all their software. And then at about 9 p.m., I'd talk with them. They were just starting the day. I'd tell them what to work on that day, and I'd go to bed, and they would work. So it was a 24-hour operation. So got this first site ready. It was pretty awful, but it cost maybe $1,000. Happy to talk about that, like using outsourcing to come up with your first website. But got it going, got some people using it. You guys can probably relate because you're already building products, but just a crazy experience. The first time that you bring a new product to life and other people start using it. I don't have any kids. I hope you guys don't have kids right now. But it's probably probably the closest thing I can feel like to being a father, right? Is you literally have this idea, you sketch it out on a napkin, you build it, and then you have people starting to use it, and it starts to take on its own life and starts to become something else. It's really, really energizing. So I did that and went for about 6 months, 9 months, and tried to raise money. And really lucked out and got an offer for funding. And it was just me at the time. It's really awful trying to raise money as a solo entrepreneur. I really recommend that you get like a team to do it. But I raised about $350,000 from, at the time it was Google's CEO, Eric Schmidt. Now he's their chairman. So that was like an incredible feeling because my parents aren't from Silicon Valley. They don't really know about startups. So when I left, a great job in New York, this great consulting job to start my own company, it was like I told them I was going to go fight space aliens. It was like, what? Like, what are you doing? It just seemed insane to them. But when I raised money, I think that they felt like a little bit more comfortable because at least I wasn't going to starve to death. So I raised 350,000 bucks, and about 2 months later, I hired the first engineer. That was great, not being alone anymore, having one other person to talk to. Before that, it was like sock puppets. You know, it was like me in a room. I was like going so lonely. I was going crazy by myself. But added an engineer, had someone else to work with, and then something really big happened. I think this happens to probably every startup, but we did a major pivot. What happened is I was really in love with that birthday idea, right? Let's have it really simple for people to do these videos. And I just coincidentally was talking to one of the senior marketers at the online dating site eHarmony. And she said, look, Justin, I like what you're doing, but there's a business application here. And we could do this for customer testimonials, and we could do it for video product reviews. And it just so happens that my annual marketing budget is $100 million. So I hung up the phone and thought, oh my gosh, there is so much money here. Let's just kick this whole consumer thing to the curb, and let's really focus on video for businesses. And it was literally that simple. One phone call and the entire company changed. We changed our name, we changed our product, and 2 months later we launched in New York with TechCrunch. They do like TechCrunch Disrupt. They do like 20 companies at launch. And we were then a video testimonial site. And that's kind of what we've been doing since then. And we made it to profitability, we raised $2 million bucks, and then we just kind of kept on growing. But it's been an incredible experience. The hardest thing I've ever done, by far. Like, it is the highest highs and the lowest lows you can ever imagine. Everything takes 10 times more effort and 10 times more time than you ever think. You like start the company and you're like, oh, we're going to incorporate, that'll be easy, and it takes weeks. You know, it's like a pain in the butt. And everything's like that. Oh, we're going to hire people. Well, hiring people is a huge pain in the butt. And like everything has been harder than I would have ever imagined. But at the end of the day, I'm able to work with a bunch of great people that I all hired. I'm able to, come up with a new product to bring something new into the world, and it's really, really fun. So I'm happy to go into like more detail on anything, but that's the quick background for what I've been up to.
What are you guys curious about? It's quite the entrepreneurial journey, huh?
Yeah.
So how would you differentiate yourself? I mean, as a video site, how would you sort of? What would be the reason somebody would go to you as opposed to hiring somebody to make a video of like software?
Yeah. So it's a really good question, and that's when we first started selling, that was what all of these marketers would ask, and they'd say like, why should we work with you? Especially when no one's heard of us, right? Now at least we've got like big clients. We've got like Hyundai and Levi's and Bud Light and all these great brands. So now we can be like, because they work with us, right? But when we first started, it's like two of us. We're like basically presenting to them on napkins, telling them about what we're gonna do, and that's what they'd say. And what we found is that first of all, so Shutterfly, you guys know Shutterfly? They do like the online photo books.
Yeah.
They were one of our first customers, and they said, look, we actually did this. Here's what we did. We took a flip cam, we mailed it to 100 customers, and we said, keep the flip cam, take a video of yourself, and just send us the video file. So it's like, I don't know, flip cams used to be $300 times 100 people, like really expensive. They got a handful of them back, and it was a huge hassle for the customer. And so what we said is, look, here's our little widget. Add it to your website, add it to your Facebook page. Someone can literally right there click record. They can record a video. They don't have to edit it. They give you the legal ownership. All these other add-ons. And so it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money. So that's kind of how we differentiated it first. Is like, this is so simple, and we have all the analytics to go along with it and all these other things. And so what Shutterfly said is like, look, we could probably build that, but it's going to take us about 6 months, and it's going to take us about $100,000. Or we can just pay these guys a couple $1,000 a month. And so that was the way we got the first couple deals. Yeah.
Having worked alone for a couple of months initially, how did you like brainstorm? Who did you have so that you could brainstorm your ideas?
So I'm like an extreme extrovert. I need to like talk out loud in order to think. So working on my own was awful. That was like that was like being in jail. It was like worse than being on a submarine. So what I did is I borrowed time from other people. You know, I would grab roommates, or I would grab advisors, or I would grab other entrepreneurs, or anyone who would talk about this stuff that knew something. I would talk with them and get their thoughts. The good part is that you get really smart people with really different backgrounds. They see things from different perspectives. The downside is you're constantly re-explaining your business, and you know, people are busy. So you get an hour with someone, and then you want to ask them another question, and you probably can't talk to them again for another month. So it goes really slowly. So I think there's some advantages to working on a startup by yourself. I mean, I get to do whatever I want. I get to call all the shots. You own more of the company rather than, you know, me having half of the company. At the start, I have all of it. But I think you have so much more to gain if you can find a partner. Because, you know, more than just having someone to bounce ideas off of, it's just really helpful when you have an awful meeting to like walk out and have someone to look across the room and be like, that sucked. And, you know, like have someone who's like, oh yeah, it really did. Or when you're really excited, you know, and like you just sold something, be able to, you know, be excited about it. Or someone to balance you out. You know, it's such a long marathon of a journey as an entrepreneur. And, you know, do you guys read like TechCrunch or Pando Daily? Like you see in these websites, you hear about these great, you know, these great sales. Waze gets bought by Google for $1.2 billion, and Instagram gets sold for $1 billion, and you're constantly seeing all of these things. You're like, whoa, this is awesome. It's going to be so easy. But the truth is that that's like 1 out of 1,000,000 startups, and they get a lot of publicity. But like most startups, they're just barely getting by. You know, it's like this plane that's on the verge of crashing and flying every single day. And so if you have that partner, you really have someone to balance you out when you go through those highs and lows.
Oh.
Yeah.
Lowest lows? What was that for you?
Oh man,
last year?
changes on the day. Yeah. Oh yeah. I think last year. Yeah, last year was definitely probably the lowest. So we raised a ton of money, like $2 million, and there was like 4 of us at the time, and then like brought on like a huge team. We grew to like 18 people, and we just kind of misstepped a lot. Sales weren't growing as quickly as we thought. I made a lot of mistakes on who I hired, and so I had this like 1 month period, or probably maybe a 2 month period, where of 18 people, I like fired or had quit or like leave like 8 of those 18. And so like literally half the company. And it's like embarrassing too, because like literally 1 month I'm having dinner with friends, I'm like, oh, it's great, we're like 18 people, and then like we'll grab lunch a month later, I'm like, yeah, we're like 10, and they're like, what? Like what's going on over there? Like you're an idiot. So it sucked. I mean, like there were people I really liked that I really, you know, you're working in such tight quarters, you really get to know people. And I had some people that I really worked with closely that like quit and were, like thought I was a jerk and was like, you're the worst person ever, and that like sucks, it hurts your feelings. And like I had people that I really liked, and they had like families, and like I realized I made a mistake and they weren't the right person, and you have to sit them down and be like, you know, today's your last day, and like leave your equipment, and that sucks. And you have people where, you know, you just don't have the money for them and you wish you could keep them on. And so that was definitely the lowest, because you just, you know, it's like you guys spend all this time in a class together, and then if you had to like vote someone out of the class, it would suck, right? Because you like really get to know people well. So that was the lowest point, and that was like literally like every day was wondering like, are we going to go out of business? You know? Am I going to? And it's just the little things like, will I have to call up investors and tell them I lost their money? And some of the investors are like friends. You know, some of them are angel investors, people I went to school with that gave me money, and like thinking through like, wow, I could have to call these people up and be like, hey, you know that money, that's gone, you know? And like, maybe I have to fire everyone. And maybe, you know, like the personal stuff too, maybe I have to tell everyone I'm unemployed. You know, I started this company and didn't go anywhere. And, you know, maybe all these things, and it just really adds up on you. But the good thing that came out of that low is that it kind of pushes you to the cliff. You know, you get all the way to the edge, and you look over and you're like, wow, like that's the game we're playing, right? It could all end, right? We could be billionaires tomorrow, or we could be unemployed in a failed startup. And so that was the first time for me that I kind of got to the edge of that cliff and kind of looked over. I'm like, yeah, it would suck, but it's not the end of the world. And you know, since then, that was over a year ago, a year and a half ago, we've probably been in a similar spot to that 4 or 5 times. And I expect that if we're still in business a year from now, we'll have gone through that 4 or 5 more times. But the first time was the worst. But it's something good for you guys to know is that, you know, you're always reading about, always hearing about like the super successes, but there's so many, you know, roads to get there. And there's, for every one that makes it, there's thousands that don't. But it's still worth it, I think, in the end. Yeah.
Sorry, just one more.
Yeah.
So if you were thinking about, you know, starting up a company,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, there are probably a lot of outlandish ideas.
Yeah.
So how would you say, like, analyze the risks and benefits? Like, what if, you know, somebody wanted to, you know, start up some company that you thought was crazy, like, you know, transporting elephants or something.
I think that's a great business,
But
actually.
like, for some reason they thought, they were like, yeah, like, I think I can do this. Like,
Yeah.
is there a point where you're sort of like, I don't think that's like a viable idea to chase?
So, for me, I think like I'm good at executing and operating as an entrepreneur. I think I'd be the worst investor. There's been so many ideas where someone tells me or shows me their idea, I'm like, that's not gonna work, and then it's like huge. And then there's other ideas where I'm like, this is gonna be awesome, and it like completely fails. So I think that just people in general are really bad evaluators of what's gonna be good and what's gonna be bad. I think what is a good predictor is real people. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of getting a product to market as quickly as possible. At the design school at Stanford, they call it like the minimum viable product. Like the worst possible product. You know, it looks like garbage, it doesn't really work that well, but you get the minimum viable product out to market as soon as quickly as possible, and then you see how people use it. Because there's some ideas that you'd hear about it, and you think it's stupid, but you get it out there and people actually start using it. And there's other ideas that you think are great, and then you actually get it out there and no one does it. So like my approach is like to validate if an idea works or not. Don't listen to your friends. Don't listen to like other people. Get it out to the market because there's billions of people out there, right? And maybe elephant transportation actually works for like 100,000 of them, and that's enough to have a business off of. So I think like get the idea out as quickly as possible. And then the other thing is just to really always keep your ear to the ground. Like you hear about product pivots, right? Like for us, it was consumer birthdays to product testimonials and reviews. And almost every company goes through those pivots. And so you have to really not be too married to that initial idea. Maybe it starts with transporting elephants, and then you realize like, whoa, giraffes is where it's at. And you have to be able to like drop the elephants and move to giraffes without hesitating. So my advice is like, get it out there as soon as possible, but then really keep your ear to like what customers are saying, and be really willing to move at any point. And that was tough for me. I mean, I remember my advisor, my first advisor, was like, hey, like, it sounds like, you know, there may be other opportunities for video, and you're starting with birthdays. It's like, will you be willing to shift? And I literally told him, like, no, I'm like in love with this idea. I think it's the best thing ever, and I want to do this. I'm energized by it. But when push came to shove, you know, throw it in the gutter, move to the next one. Yeah.
With your initial idea, how did you go about with the customer validation?
So I went from 2 different models. Like one is like consumer focused and the other is business focused. And on the consumer one, the way that we